I usually work on it.
Yes. Gotta be adaptable.
No, I'm making your life harder. I got your comment. I got your comments. Thanks, Dave. Action plans. VIP action plans.
Yeah, this morning.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I haven't gotten the second email. We're just running around with our hair on fire right now. So I'm gonna try to get to that today or tomorrow morning.
Our capital is on, and we have our 5 eggs.
Oops. Does everyone get one of these, the bill information?
Yeah, we
I got loads of them.
Yeah, there's 20 copies, so
have.
Are the extra agendas?
I'll email it to you.
Yeah, we.
Usually it just pops up, you know?
Yeah, but it's like it's not reading it or something.
Well, if it's working, it's visitor with a capital V, 1988.
Let me try again.
Well, it was giving us problems there. If the 5G visitor one isn't working, or guest one, there's a 2.4G, which is the same password. Sorry, we're trying to figure it out.
What's the password?
It's visitor with a capital V, 1988.
That's you were born, Carl?
Okay, we're
I
gonna get
wish.
started with
Sorry,
who's
it's not
here
working.
and do you know who's online yet?
I'm just getting.
Okay. So, when I was down at the St. George Water Conference a couple weeks ago, talking with Dan, referred to councils as think tanks for water. And I was like, "Duh," because I know I'm weird. I've always wanted to be a part of a think tank because I feel like that's the part of me that works, and sometimes my body checks out. Oh, go brains. Anyway, I wanted to welcome you here. Yeah, between the St. George Conference and then the Northern Utah water users and USU spring runoff back to back, I feel like I'm excited for where water is going for Utah and for the Bear River Watershed. And I hope you are too. I'm really optimistic that this council can address the issues that we're all facing in a way that's collaborative and helpful, and maybe even cutting edge, maybe, we'll see. But anyway, that's kind of where I want to, yeah, we'll get there towards the end. Erin Holmes is with us for the first time today. She's with the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. It was Mike that was here in your stead, Dunphy? Yeah. I love it. Good job, Brain. So we're just gonna take a quick, introduce your name and who you represent here on the council. And we're gonna start with you, Jake, because we're gonna go from the back around there and then.
Good afternoon, I'm Jake Michael Serago, a hydrologist and engineer at the Division of Water Resources. I work in the hydrology and modeling, that's my expertise, and I'm the liaison.
Thank you.
I'm Tom Morphy. I'm a backup area specialist for the area for Jake.
Very good.
Laura Vernon, Great Salt Lake Basin Water Resources. Mystery Larson with Bear River Water Conservancy District.
I'm Tyler Pugsley with Brigham City Corporation, Public Works Director, and we also own and operate Manaway Reservoir and properties up in Manaway.
Melissa Early, Division of Wildlife Resources. I'm the liaison and a colleague here today.
Shane Hill, Division of Wildlife Resources, Habitat Restoration Biologist.
Great.
Megan Doyle, Vision Water.
Skylar Bach, Water Rights.
Kurt Lindley on the dam tender for the Hiram Dam.
Carly Payne, Division of Water Resources.
Claudia Cuttle with Bear Lake.
Stephen Griffin with Newton Dam.
LJ Rigby, Newton Dam and the Farm Bureau, Utah Farm Bureau Federation.
Erin Holmes, I'm the project leader at the Bear River the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge. And we get all that good water that comes down. and I'm really excited to be here. I love your enthusiasm. I feel the same way, and looking forward to being a part of this group.
Conley Baldwin, hydrologist for Pacific Corp.
What are you?
Sean Milne, Bear River Association of Governments.
Christy Hansen. I'm with Cache Highline Water Association now.
Carl Mackley with, who am I with? Bear River Water Conservancy District. I see Bear River
host.
Watershed Council and I can't keep the
Bears.
acronyms right.
Hollywood with the Langdon Group.
Trevor Nielson was Bear River Canal Company. I also represent the Bear River Council on the Great Salt Lake.
And Neville with the Nature Conservancy. I'm representing water dependent habitat and environments. That's that. Oh.
Okay. Can you tell us who's online or?
Well, sure. Madam Chair, we are joined by Mark Scadden
Hi, Mark.
Hi, thank you. From the Shoshone Nation, Bradley Perry,
Hello, Bradley.
Hi, Brad.
Hey. Jeff Ostermiller.
Hey, Jeff.
Jeff Ostermiller. Jeff, who are you with?
UWQ.
Oh, Division of Water Quality.
Yeah, I'm also Moonlight as a member of the Cache Water District Board.
Oh, very good.
James DeRito, is it Rito or Rito? Dorito.
Trout Unlimited.
We got you.
Thanks. Love me Doritos. All right. Someone labeled me, which seems like quite a nice joke. But it's not me, it's someone they labeled that.
Confess, anyone out there? Me? Okay,
Nathan Daugs with Cache Water.
good to have you here, Nate.
Zach
Good to be here.
Sorry about that. Zach Moncourt.
And Zach?
I'm a student at BYU, and for a water policy class that I'm in with Dr. Rob Sobey, we've got to attend some policy events. So hopefully,
We won't put you to sleep.
I think this stuff is really interesting, actually. So
Very good. We're glad to have you here. Thank you.
Are we always from BYU?
Hey, it's all right. It's Aggie country, but
Give us some dirt on your professor and we'll call it even.
Carl didn't say that.
Weaver graduates.
They're fantastic.
They just fly under the radar and just do their thing. I know, right? Okay,
And
appreciate
then We
that.
have one more from a phone number ending in 9898
Phone 9898 confession
or the me.
or me? Okay,
Okay, that's it, Madam Chair.
okay. Sounds good. All right. Trevor, will you hit us with some legislative updates?
Okay. So I'm going to be brief. I don't know if I'll go over every single one because we spent some time in our last meeting talking about these before the session. There weren't too many surprise bills in the session. I will point those out as we kind of go through, but if you want me to spend more time on one or the other or have questions, those folks online, raise your hand and in the room. Just let me know to stop and ask your questions. So I've organized them by list of those that have passed and those that did not quite make it across the finish line, and then we're in order of bill number. So water efficient landscapes, this was the Owens bill that was essentially the idea of government leading out by example. So new governmental buildings had to meet certain outdoor watering requirements, efficiencies. And the next was water right publication amendments. This just makes it so the state engineer can speed up the process of processing change applications and new applications where they don't have to wait for some of the technical stuff that follows with proof of publication. And the next one is water measuring and accounting amendments. This just allowed water measuring, well, it made some updates and allowed like telemetry and a few other things to be added on as items that we consider in the accounting and like can be paid for with state funds. The next one is the Utah Waterways Amendment. So Utah Waterways was created just a few years ago. The idea behind this bill was that there's not, we used to have the water cycle and water taught in curriculum as part of our school curriculum. And so this bill just directs Utah Waterways to work with the water conservancy districts in the state to re-up that, like to renew that curriculum and work with the school board on adding that back in so that children kind of have, understand that water doesn't come from the tap. The next one is the Columbia Interstate Compact Amendments. This just clears up well, the Columbia Interstate Compact doesn't exist, and so it just removes it from code. It wasn't ratified by other states, and so it's just a code cleanup by Peterson. Next one is water-related changes by Snider. This was a big change to, this is probably the most influential bill of the session for water. It started out to be quite an exciting bill, and it kind of got parsed back. It was a merger of 5 different bills, and they've decided to kind of peel back some of those pieces and study them for future legislation, maybe next session and the session after. The components of that bill that did pass were, it does create water infrastructure fund for the state of Utah and places an initial amount of funding into that. The next
5
thing,
million, right?
what was that?
5 million?
I don't remember what amount they settled on. There were so many substitutes that we'd have to take a look to see how much. It wasn't a lot of money though. The next thing is it establishes, well, it sets out some timelines for Division of Water Resources to make a state water plan. And that plan is to be done in conjunction with the, what's going to be a council that helps rank out these projects. Essentially, we will all put in our projects. They'll look at the merits of those projects, and essentially it will be like they do with UDOT, where you list out all the projects and you go until the funds run out for that particular cycle. And so there's a lot of questions on how things will be ranked and whether water is so different than the state highway system because it's all one system owned by the state, right?
The highways.
Whereas water, we all have different needs and interests, and then also it's divided into all different kinds of use. I mean, you have agricultural use, you have secondary, culinary, stormwater, sewer, and each has its unique needs, federal and state requirements, as well as funding sources. And so there's discussion on whether it will be broken out and you'll compete only against projects of similar nature. So ag stays with ag, stormwater with stormwater, culinary with culinary, so on and so forth. That also would help with the splitting out of the monies so that the state legislature can kind of, I guess, set the tone on where they want to focus. But all these things are not necessarily known on how it will work out. And so there was a fee, the biggest, I guess, concern about the whole bill is the fee to fund the overall master infrastructure, this master infrastructure planning or fund. Thank you. Sorry, it's been a long day, and anyway, I won't make excuses for myself.
Trevor, when the Northern Utah water users had their conference and Snider and Sandal were there, they took a question and answer period. I raised my hand and asked Casey Snider where watershed councils might fit, specifically in 280. And his answer was evasive a little to some degree, because he said that depends on, it was almost like what they decide to do. And I don't know, some of you were there, but I took that to mean what water councils decide what we decide our function is. And so, I don't know, I have just gotten the impression that if watershed councils don't step up and address issues and discuss hard things, we will become irrelevant. And so I saw 280 as a path maybe forward to relevancy, but I don't, at least working with the Department of Water Resources and Water Rights, that's a path forward for us. But if we're going to, our mandate is to give feedback to the State Watersheds Council and have them inform the legislature, then you know,
Yeah, so the legislation does specifically talk about the state watershed council as being a group that they are specifically assigned to coordinate with in both the state water plan and how they develop this ranking and kind of to help make sure that they're not missing the mark as far as getting those important projects, because the antithesis of this bill was we have somewhere between 30, I think it's $30 billion worth of water projects that need to be completed by 2050 or 2060. I mean, it depends. The number changes depending on how far out you go. And then, but it's in the billions, and with the federal partners starting to step away from participating in water projects, there has to be a state funded or a locally funded piece that steps in to fill that need. Otherwise, our systems will collapse over time. They need to be updated, they need to be repaired. And I mean, case in point, I was talking with Beaver Basin while we were down to the to the St. George Water Conference. And they're putting in a siphon right now that's only 2 miles long and it's $80 million. And so just water projects are not inexpensive. And so we've got to have a better way to fund them. And so how the State Watershed Council works with that legislation really depends on the input that we will give. And then there is an anticipation that needs are different in different parts of the state. What they need in St. George is completely different than what we need in our basin. And so, as she has said, I agree, councils that decide to be active in this process, I think will have influence in making sure that that their area is addressed as a unique area, not as a one size fits all for the entire state. The fee is the biggest part, like I was saying, that's most controversial. The concern is none of us want to pay the fee, but all of us would like to enjoy the funds. And so, where it gets assessed and how much it is and how it's implemented are all questions that need to be answered. The prevailing idea is that something a little bit more modest to begin with, that builds over time so that systems can adjust to those, having that essentially, well, it'll be interesting to see if it survives truth and taxation, but as not being seen as a tax, but somehow you have to fund those billions of dollars of improvements. So are there any questions on that bill? Okay, so moving down and through, the next one, let's see, was produced water amendments. This has to, we talked a little bit about this last time about water that's used, that comes out when they produce oil and what can be done with that. And the idea is to allow them to use that water so that it can free up freshwater sources in the Colorado Basin. Brine amendments, this actually doesn't have anything to do with brine shrimp. This has to do with brines out of deep, well, mostly deep wells, but essentially they pump water to the surface, remove the minerals, and then they return the water, is my understanding. Is that on, Skylar?
Yeah, I think so.
So, just the processes and the royalties and how that all works, they're trying to get that pinned down with these brine, mineral extractions. The next is the Great Salt Lake revisions. This is probably the second most influential bill. This bill has to do with how we deal with mineral extraction on the lake. Particularly, it pins down a lot of things about how the royalties are collected, how they'll deal with some of the lithium type situation or lithium contracts. Then the last thing is the state engineer is assigned to establish some kind of a priority schedule or what's the best way to describe this? Yes, I love that. Extra plan for how the mineral extractors will be administered in priority. That hasn't happened in the past, and so understanding how that, I don't know, that was the big focus there. Okay, so the next one is 520. This is foul land amendments. This essentially has to do with Greenbelt And if people choose to lease water, particularly in times of shortage, they don't lose their greenbelt status because they chose to lease water for environmental uses. The next one is concurrent resolution recognizing the importance of cross-issue growth impacts. This, again, it's a non-binding resolution, but it just talks about how water is a component of planning. It's not, and growth. It's not something that we can necessarily ignore anymore. It and transportation and utilities are all big parts of making sure we grow responsibly. So it just kind of lays out some state goals and understandings when it comes to that. Safe Drinking Water Amendment Act. This is just a renewal of the Safe Drinking Water Act. The next one is water modifications. This essentially takes what we saw with the saved water and ag optimization effort from last year, takes it from a specific section of code and kind of splits it out throughout the water code so that it actually dovetails into everywhere else. So for instance, saved water is a new designation as far as like it's whether there's appropriations, change applications, extensions, those types of things. It creates that as a new type of designation for a water right. And it kind of cleans that up and integrates it into the rest of the Utah Water Code. The other thing is there were a few sideboards and nuts and bolts that needed to be added with that as well. Next one is water shareholder amendments. This reverted the shareholder change application statute, reverted it back to what it was before last session. There was some changes that were made, and after Senator Sandel looked at it and heard kind of all the sides of the story, he felt like that returning the code back to where the way it was the best balance. The next one is water right restricted account amendments. I believe this allows the state engineer to use the water restricted account to pay for things like telemetry and a few other items that they'd like to spend state monies on. Next one is generational water infrastructure amendments. This is probably the third most influential bill.
Second or first.
It essentially makes a water, what did they call it?
Water agent.
Yes. A water agent that can go work with other states on dealing with interstate exchanges of water. The example that they use is to create more water for us to use along the Wasatch Front. You could take more Colorado water if you replaced California's share of the Colorado water with desalination plants sorry. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Yeah, in California.
In California.
So it's kind of like Arizona paying for cloud seeding in Utah.
Those type of programs, yeah. Because the compact representatives, they all have other focuses, other responsibilities. And so the state just felt that there was someone who needed to make these conversations happen with other states and kind of look at this specifically about creating a bigger water supply by working with other states. It went kind of beyond the commissioners, and it just felt they needed someone specific to do that. Last one I've got on the ones that have passed.
So Trevor?
Yeah.
This is Nate. Just one thing to add on that last one. So the one other thing it does, it creates the new Watershed District Council with SB 211. And that is made up of one representative from the 4 big water districts. And so they will help plan those big water projects. We did try pretty hard to get either someone from a smaller district or someone from the Bear River represented on that district commission, but we did fail in that. And then at our water conference last week where the governor was here, he did announce that water agent will be Joel Ferry.
Oh.
So I don't, and that was, I think, a surprise to Joel that he made that announcement public already, but he did make that. And I don't know if that means that that's a full-time job and we'll be getting a new director of natural resources here in the next short period, or if he will do both jobs for that.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah.
So,
By comparison, they do.
yeah,
even with
we've
sort of-
had so much free time. The next one is railroad amendments. This may not seem like it's a water bill, but it has to do with, it's created a railroad ombudsman. And any of us in water have had to probably work with the railroad at some point, and they can be a little bit, well, I have a friend that says that Omaha doesn't know where Tremont, Utah is. And so, my hope is that with the ombudsman, it will kind of make the railroad have to come and visit on some of these problems that some systems do have, with crossing over and under, railroads. So just a little side note on that, that it can help where you're with your interactions with the railroad. They can act as kind of a mediator. Bill would note that did not pass was the canal trail amendments. Didn't make it. That had to do with turning old canals into recreation trails. Another one that there was a lot of work on was the riparian amendments by Benyon. It kept getting kind of parsed back and parsed back and parsed back. The last one was just an individual that would be staffed by DNR to deal with riparian areas and help advise on riparian areas, but it died because the legislature didn't feel like they had enough funding in the coffers to get that one thing paid for. But the idea there was that the overall goal of the bill was that riparian areas could be included in the land use authority's general plan, and provided some support for that. There was a lot of pushback, especially from the agricultural community, because some of the areas that are defined as riparian are sometimes just drain ditches. And so there was some concern there. I'm trying to see if there's any other. Let's see, water efficiency amendments, that's SB 118. That would have given an incentive to developers to put in more efficient landscaping as they did initial construction. It's a great idea, but the legislature with its limited funding decided that was not where they wanted to spend their funds this time around. But it is a lot cheaper to make sure a house goes in with the right type of landscaping to keep water use down versus having to retrofit later. One other one of note is 196 Great Salt Lake Amendments by Bluen. This had to do with directing the state engineer to figure out how to maximize the amount of water that got to the Great Salt Lake in drought year, or in wet years. And it ran out of time. There were also questions as to state engineer administers in priority, and as long as they're doing that, that would result in the maximum amount of water making it to the lake. But I'm sure this one will probably come back in a different form. So any questions on bills?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's good, Trevor.
All right, Jake, you're up.
Yeah, here. Pass this around. Okay, good morning, everyone. They recognize me. I've been here to present on the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan before. So I'm not gonna go much into detail about it, just cover some basics. A little introductory material, some background on the plan, and then give you a task related to this list. And then we'd like to have a little discussion. Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan. And the integration really means a planning integration. In other words, bringing together data, models, water users from each of the river basins and the lake interests, bringing those together for planning, which has never been done before. Okay, so next. You want me to switch it? Okay. So I don't need to explain the problem to all of you, but water resources in the basin have been stressed in recent years. For those of us who haven't felt the stress, a lot of that is because the stress is passed on to the lake and wetlands around the lake and the natural environment. What's the shared vision for the future? You know, how do we want to use water in the basin? What's the solution to our water problems? There's generally no consensus on this. There's no consensus even on the story. You know, what is the problem? What makes it even more difficult is at times there's no consensus on data, analysis methods, or defining the problem. And sometimes this can really lead to hasty decision making. In other words, decision making that has long-term impacts that may affect water users in a negative way without inadvertently. And so this all to say there's no water resource plan for the basin, which is why the goal of this is to produce a plan which, when implemented, will ensure a resilient water system going into the future for Great Salt Lake and all the water users of the basin. So this project is a joint venture. It was $5 million from the Utah legislature in the 2022 session, $3 million from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. So we're bringing those together, and the planning is being done by primarily these groups. So there's what's not listed here is the project team, which consists of folks in the Division of Water Resources, as well as other agencies and consultants that we hire to help. The Great Salt Lake Commissioner and his office, the advisory group, which right now is comprised of state and federal agencies that manage and have jurisdiction in the basin. A steering committee, which is comprised of various water interests in the basin. Watershed councils, so this is mainly what we want to discuss with you all today. Water users, who are the primary ones that will be implementing the plan and the ones who are impacted by the plan, and then as well as public participants such as decision makers and representatives. So the timeline, there's been a lot of thinking, a lot of activity in getting geared up for this plan because it's complex and there are a lot of social challenges and technical challenges. But just like, you know, you're going on a road trip across the Great Basin, you know, you climb up, you go down, you climb up and you go down. So we've been climbing up, we're kind of ready to go down and really get moving with some of these things. And so we're beginning that now, and we're looking out to you for support. So the steps to complete the plan are generally these: develop performance measures. And this is really meaning, how do you measure whether something is, whether you know your interest is impacted positively or negatively? How do you assess whether, you know, conditions will be better for you or worse for you, right? So how do you actually do that? For you know, for example, for Great Salt Lake, this can present actual challenges. So next, we want to represent the existing conditions of the system. So do we do that? Do we have all the water supplies that we need, the water users, the reservoirs and conveyance facilities? Can we represent the system well so that then we could look at potential future conditions? We could look at conditions that are drier, conditions that are wetter, all types of scenarios. We could look at conditions where people use less water, where they use more water. And then we begin to come into those kind of alternatives. So that may be diversion, depletion, return alternatives. That could be infrastructure alternatives. It can be policy alternatives. could be operations alternatives. And then we utilize these performance measures to see, well, which parts of the system are improved and which parts are worse off. And then we have to analyze all of those so that then we can figure out, is there a way that if one area is worse off, is there something that the others who benefit can compensate them so that they actually can improve in other areas? And this part may go around and around until eventually we can come to accord on what the basin-wide strategy should be. So for the Bear River, this is what I talked about at the last meeting, is an existing model that we have. This model has much the same of what the water rights accounting model has, the same basic structure. This model extends upstream of Bear Lake. It has all of the main stem reservoirs, the main stem water users. And it was developed jointly by the Division of Water Resources here in Utah, Idaho Department of Water Resources, the Wyoming State Engineer's Office, and Conley.
Thank you.
In other words, Conley built it for you guys, right?
Well,
Oh, no. It was very much a joint effort.
Yeah.
It was-
a really, really good
Jake-
teamwork.
Jake really let out. Yeah.
Really, really good teamwork. So what we're doing is we have a model like that for each of the river basins, as well as Great Salt Lake and the surrounding wetlands, and we're just bringing all of those together. And so, what we want to do is upgrade and improve that model so that it represents the Bear River Basin as well as possible. And so we have, these four who are part of the current modeling team, as well as some others who have, joined efforts. So, from you all, I want to know if there's anyone else who you would like to be, part of this technical team. So this technical team will be meeting regularly to develop and improve the model. But we can also have people who aren't technically involved, who are just kind of play more of an advisory. So if anyone submits someone to be on here, they'll be part of the team. They can get emails, invitations, any meeting minutes that we take, and at least can stay abreast at the progress that this team is making and be able to report out. Okay. Any questions?
So to me, I feel like that is a question that we need to address.
So another important part of this is working with water users, because ultimately water users are the ones who are represented in the model. And what we've done here is pull together essentially the largest water right holders in the state of Utah in the Bear River Basin. And this doesn't mean that this is exclusively those who are represented in the model. It just means this is a group that we want to assure are represented in the model, and a group that we could meet with.
Explain the Bountiful City one to me.
They have their own.
So this list I handed out to you. And so one of the challenges with doing the integrated plan for the Great Salt Lake Basin is the number of water users. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah.
And so there's no way to effectively do it in this iteration, the first iteration of the plan. We can't include everybody. And so this, our approach is to find those who have the largest water rights or are, in some way involved. So I've passed out this list so that you can either,
Is this our basin or the Great Salt Lake Basin?
this is only the Bear
Okay,
and only the Utah portion of the Bear.
right.
And so what I would like for you all to do is mark this paper with either water users who, you think should be included on this list who aren't. Strike out people who you think shouldn't be. There may be some, because I've included, there's some groups who have water rights in the, throughout the Great Salt Lake Basin, not just in the Bear. And so I've included them in the Bear, but they may not actually be water users or water right holders in the Bear.
Jake, do you wanna tell them how you got the criteria to like make it on this list?
Yeah, so this list is really a cursory start, just based on querying water rights data.
The size.
Yeah, so the amount of water right holding. So that should be clear. You should see, clearly that you see the largest water users on this list. There may be some questions about whether some are actually large water.
And some aren't like diverting, some are from groundwater or springs. Some are from the.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
You
ma'am.
just did.
Thanks,
Or you can
Carl.
ask another one.
So I have a question. Like you said, some of these water right holders are not technically users in our basin yet, but wouldn't that over 7 years negate their water right? Because of beneficial use?
Yeah, it's a question for that group back there.
Skylar?
I mean, not necessarily, because it's subject to forfeiture, but it doesn't mean that it's forfeited, so. To forfeit a water right, it takes legal action, so if you guys want to go sue them for no benefit of your own, you can sue them, and if they haven't used it, then they could use it.
Okay.
Then also, there's sometimes like federal reserve rights, which is also.
Good to know. Thanks, Skylar.
So our current model has, it has more water users than so it has some water users that aren't on this list. But what we're hoping is that this list, so make notes on here. Particularly what I'd be interested in is getting contact, if you know of a better person who we should be communicating with on that list. And if you do add anyone, if you could include a contact as well. But the reason that, the reason we're trying to do this is because we have a list like that similar for the Jordan River Basin, the Utah Lake, Provo River Basin, the Weber Basin, as well as the West Desert and Great Salt Lake area. So it ends up being a lot of groups, and we feel that if this list can be involved in the planning, that is really important. And that smaller water users will want to join or kind of follow the lead. So for the Watershed Council, what I want to know is, how do you think we could involve this list, interact and communicate with this, what will be a growing list of water users in the planning process? What we would like is, potentially to have a time slot allocated on every Watershed Council agenda, so that someone on the integrated plan team can come and give a report. And that if they know that, we could talk to the water users and tell them, there will be something related to the integrated plan at the Watershed Council.
Then they could tune in.
Yeah, so that would help, that helps us with the planning, but it also helps with fostering the kind of community and relevancy of the Watershed Council, because they will know that it requires an extensive effort for communications with this many water users just in the Bear. And so if we could somehow do that, tell them that we'll be working with them through the Watershed Council, that facilitates communication and meeting time. And recognizing that we don't want to take up all of your meeting with this, that we could maybe schedule special workshops, like sponsored by the Watershed Council, in which we, maybe a half day or 3/4 day workshop where it's all related to dealing with the model, with the planning, the steps in the planning process. So that's kind of my discussion item. What do you all think? What are good ways to involve water users, folks who aren't, coming to these meetings? How can we do that better through the Watershed Council or us? And then whether this would work for you.
How do we sell it to them? Why, that's why, I know Wild River, but if I'd like to, I'm not, I don't have enough information. I'm not the right person. These guys are.
One thing I've seen, because I'm new to
How
water.
do we get them?
Oh, sorry, Ann.
Yeah, but how do we get them here involved?
Well, the big thing I see in water in the basin is that our average user, which I was 3 years ago, has no idea about basic water information. But so one of my ideas is to do as just personally watershed council chair, do some op-eds in local publications. So Cache Valley Daily, I don't know what the Box Elder, other area publications are.
County, too.
Right, yeah, the whole watershed, right? But there's definitely an information gap in communicating to even the water users. That was one of my frustrations when I came into water was unless I heard it through the grapevine, I didn't know what the legislation was. I didn't know, so we, meaning the Watershed Council, and perhaps me in particular with op-ed pieces, can educate beyond the 4th grade water cycle of the legislation.
That's good.
So, and I wonder if we don't have a message crafted by the planning team. And maybe if we can use the water district mailing list. Because then you get the actual water users. And you get information directly to them.
Yeah.
A lot of times those kind of addresses are kind of messed up. You don't get quite to the people, but you're gonna get to most of them. So have the message crafted that kind of lays out, here's what we're doing. It's important because this is the foundation for the Great Salt Lake Plan. And I guess you don't want to scare people, but somehow emphasize that this is information we use to set policy.
Yeah, and part of that, and so we can do that. And, particularly the list that we derive here, the contact, I think that would be a starting list. All the lists that you have currently add, these names and contacts to that list. And part of it is that there's water users are already aware that, there are these looming top-down, heavy-handed approaches to solving problems. And so this is valuable because this is more of a ground up, and that we need to represent the entire water resource system of the basin. So the water users, especially large water users, are going to be in this plan, whether they will like it or not. And so it's better for them to participate to assure that they're represented appropriately, but it's also an avenue that they can communicate issues that they face, So would, a new small reservoir help the reliability, help them achieve their goals? Yes, and so now we can plug it into the bigger system and see what would the overall impact to that be, and that helps communicate. Because otherwise, right now, you might hear, oh, you want a new reservoir? That's terrible for Great Salt Lake, no way, we're not gonna do it. Well, that may not actually be the case, right? So being able to, I think, show that there are benefits to participating in this type of planning process so that we hopefully have more informed decision-making.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I just read an article where in a conservative group in Arizona, some of them pulled out of the governor's thing because they felt where they weren't being heard. I think when you try and involve everybody from the ground up, you're gonna get a lot of different ideas and things, and people appreciate that, but they like to actually feel heard. And if you don't get them on the same page to feel like they're being heard, then You know, then it goes back to backwards, they pull out, nobody wants to do anything. Yeah. So that's my concern is all these groups and everything. Yeah, just trying to make sure everybody feels heard and not the heavy hand that you're talking about.
Right, right. So we completely agree with you. And so that's why part of our approach is to make a defined list. You know, because that's one thing is it is impossible to hear everybody right now. And what we think is that by getting this planning process started, that it creates momentum. So the next time that this plan is updated, you know, all these groups will be involved, more can come in. And so we need a place to start. And so we're starting with a restricted list of the water users, which will allow us to hopefully make sure that they feel heard. But we're trying to think of the means to hear.
Yeah.
And what we would like is the watershed council to be that means. And so that's sort of coming to you all to figure out, how can we involve, you know, what can we do to get this list of water users participating in a council like this, where we can interact with them and hear them, and, you know, be able to later set workshops where we even go have more time to dedicate to.
They need to be invited to the park.
Sure. Yeah. But,
Oh, I know.
yeah.
Sometimes you don't have, you have unwanted guests.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm a little confused now, because we kind of did this when we decided who we wanted to be on the councils. We're talking about how the council should be created, and so we went through trying to pick out those groups, all those groups of people. And obviously, water users are a huge part of that. So are we saying now I mean, because those people are here. We don't need another representative for water users. We're trying to figure out how to communicate with the rest of the water users. Is that what we're trying to do? Because that becomes then our job as a council. You're not looking for one or two more people to be on your technical team, right? Or you're looking for.
Claudia, no, I think you're correct. We're not looking to expand the watershed council or make this group bigger. We're just look to have the watershed council meetings be a venue to convene the water users. So we could have from time to time, water users come fill these seats, and then we have discussion with them at that time. They're not filling those seats at the table. It's just an excuse to come to the party, you know?
Yeah, okay, we just want to be able to.
Not to belittle the voice of the council or anything, just an opportunity for people to join together. And like, we're talking about these special workshops, I would like the opportunity to say on behalf of the watershed council, you know, come join our half-day workshop. And it's kind of like you guys are hosting it in chair, you know, and you can come and kick it off and say, thank you, like, you're in our basin and we really appreciate you weighing in because what you do matters and blah, blah, blah. And then leave it to us to figure the rest out. It's not like you guys are leading the show or running it, just kind of like endorsing or sponsoring.
Or shouldn't we be leading, running, organizing the party, and you're our special guest?
Yeah, we're flexible in how we do it. I just think it would be a great unified front to like have the water users in the basin and then the watershed councils all connected together.
Yeah, because they need to know who we are and why.
Yeah.
We collectively are here and, you know.
And I think it'd be
in
a
our,
great,
in our
like,
secret council meeting.
Yeah.
They need to know that, like, I think the council. should be
yeah,
asked.
you guys can lead out.
It's not what,
Christine, what was Dan saying about you guys?
we're only in a base.
A think tank for water.
Think tank, yeah, so it's just like, you guys become the face of that for all of the water users in the basin.
Yeah, so we'll be doing this no matter what. Like, we're
Right.
doing the plan, and so we're going to be convening water users because they're represented in the. Of course, all other interests will be part of the planning process, right? And so we'll be doing that anyway, but we want to help provide you know, a purpose for the watershed council that could then be like long-term, where the watershed councils can act as a venue to all of these water users and interests to come together. You know, to attend the meetings, as well as to have, you know, extra special sessions.
Or to check in and just know where to get information.
Exactly.
Exactly. So that's what we would like, it's not to change the, you know, the composition of the council, but just to increase the connectivity throughout the watershed. Carl?
What is the position of the division on groundwater as part of the Great Salt Lake integrated plan? Because these are just surface water entities, which I get are the biggest. I understand that, but I mean, groundwater is a huge, it's kind of the last frontier that water suppliers such as the conservancy districts and cities and towns and private entities are trying to take advantage of and understand, and because it is super hard to develop any of the river water for anything right now, really. So obviously, you know, it doesn't really take into account that. So what's the position? I mean, I know like even the state engineer's office has just got $500,000 to study the groundwater basin in Cache Valley. I would hope that Box Elder County is next. What's the position there? You're just making assumptions, and I'm not trying to complicate it either, because it would really complicate it. But how does, how do you deal with that?
You're really complicated.
You
Fine,
must.
fine.
So groundwater is a component of the integrated plan. It has to be because many municipalities have their primary water source is groundwater.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of supplemental agricultural rights that come, but also looking into the future, municipalities and irrigation companies are both looking toward more groundwater. And there's still a lot of questions about groundwater, you know, in terms of effective pumping on groundwater discharge into streams. And how does that stream flow then impact downstream water users in Great Salt Lake? As well as what's the overall groundwater contribution to the lake? Some of those questions are being answered by studies that are going on now, which we may not be able to incorporate in this plan, but this plan will definitely make, will have consideration for.
So you're making
groundwater
some
use.
assumptions.
That's right. Well, yeah, there are assumptions.
I mean, you
based
have
on-
to.
Yeah,
You have to.
and I mean, because like you said, it's overall the portion of groundwater supply is small relatives to surface. And so that's basically how we're treating this project.
Even though there might be, for example, between Cutler and even the Malad, where the Malad comes into the river, it's a gaining stream. You
Well,
know?
yeah, so part of what this isn't a
Okay, you guys are
study.
getting nerdy.
Yeah, so look,
We
this,
have more things on the agenda.
I would just say that this isn't a study. So we're not trying to answer, you know, specific questions about groundwater. This is a plan. So we utilize existing
But
data. and
it is,
studies.
it is really just surface water at this point.
No, it has groundwater.
Yeah.
But
So the reason these are focused
Well,
is because there's so darn many of them.
I'm
Municipalities are in more
I'm
control.
trying to figure out what information to give you if you're gonna say there's groundwater
Some of these are.
involvement that should be
Yeah,
made.
some are.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they were targeting.
I think they'll do.
I can ask you more questions
Yeah.
later.
Okay.
did you have
I don't have to
one
take
last
up the
thing?
whole meeting.
Well, I just wanted to say that Jake's right. The part he's presenting on is not research and studies, but there is a whole other component of the basin plan that is studies and research that help inform policy decisions moving forward. And one of those is a groundwater project. And in fact, I just met yesterday with water rights, forestry fire state lands, and UGS about all of the groundwater projects going on, research projects, trying to understand. And they're looking at getting another one on board to understand, or just if there is a misrepresentation of how much groundwater is actually in the system. And so that's something that we could come to you over a period of time separate from the modeling efforts, but just talk about updates on groundwater studies so you could be better informed.
Maybe just there is, as you know, the Cache Valley study for groundwater, and then there's a Great Salt Lake Basin groundwater study that's been approved that will be done. Did you hear about that? So
somewhat.
that's USGS and UGS working on that. They had a presentation at the workshop in St. George. So that's underway.
That's
Funded.
good. That's good. It should be looked at. Okay, so again, what we're looking for here is, 10 to 15 minutes on the agenda. Always on the agenda, so we can point people to talk to. Not for me to go before Ann.
You always take more.
Let me go after Ann.
I'm not gonna do it again.
And then to have the Watershed Council, work with us so that it can organize these planning workshops. Yes, Erin.
I was just gonna say that time on the agenda, I think would be really important. We heard about information gap. You've got your water users here at the table. We are your greatest resource for outreach on this.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how much misinformation can be out there. And so, I think having regular, like specific updates, like what are you working on right now for the modeling?
Yeah, that would be great. And we've had discussions internally that if these watershed councils had been established for 20 years, that this would be the key piece to helping us with planning. But that's not the case. So what we want to do is utilize this planning effort to empower and create relevancy and activities for the watershed council. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Jake. Okay, Ann,
All right, well, this actually fits in, and
I was
Holly,
thinking the same thing.
Holly, I'm gonna have you do the clicking for me, please. So I presented when we first started, something that we had been working on for, as a group, for 10 years. I think at this time, you have more idea of what it's right, not, and what we did, what we've been doing and what our actual, potential is. So, we had some questions in the chat. I don't know, did they go away? Okay.
Sorry, we have to. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but email Jake if you have additions to the.
Oh, that is the rudest thing I've ever. I'm obsessed.
Sorry.
With no, I'm not.
You go first.
No,
You go.
so.
Thanks, guys.
All right,
Thanks.
so, there you go. So go ahead and go to the next slide. And we've already talked about this a little bit about what our intent is, right? So what I wanted to give you, and actually Jake really did set me up quite well. To really identify some of the things that we want to do with the council, right? And it basically says communicate, collaborate, and coordinate and collaborate. Yeah, next slide. So how are we gonna do that? And Jake gave us a lot of really good ideas, having an agenda item on for the model for each one. But what are those other things that we need to do? I feel like we have a lot of knowledge in this room and online, and I really want to shout out to the people who are online, especially Rich County. We definitely need a voice from that area, and because y'all know stuff that we might not know down here. So how are we gonna do that? So go ahead, next slide. So I gave you a survey for y'all to fill out. Not very many people did. I have no problem with that. That's just fine. But I just want to tell you how we got some answers on how we were gonna be doing that, so that possibly we could jumpstart ourselves into getting a more, a really understanding of what things that we need to know so that we can help advise, you know, the different groups. Okay, next slide. So we asked the questions and we put them in buckets, under agricultural, economic development, natural resources, and utility industry, right? But, and then I put down on the right-hand side, you know, who was making up the watershed councils. And if you don't see yourself in the list on the left, then please let me know. So the tribes, Bradley, I recognize that the tribes were not included. And I also feel that we did not have a really good representation of agriculture. Right? Not yet, Val, I'll get to you.
On the lower Bear River Planting.
Yeah. Okay, so they took this and basically we were asking two main questions. What are the values that you have for Bear River? And what are the problems that you see? Okay. So this is next slide. These are the different things, what they felt that they valued. And I don't think anything should be different from what you felt, and I did not, the ones that actually sent in their surveys, there's like 4 people that this was very in line with what we talked about. Is there any value under agriculture or economic development or natural resources or the utility and industry that doesn't feel that we haven't touched on as a value?
My binoculars.
I know, sorry. That's pretty big.
Well, my eyes are pretty big.
Right? And if there's not something, you know, you can just talk out loud or put it in the chat or whatever. And it's great if you feel like there's not something as a value. Anybody? Anybody online? This is the participation part of the thing. Okay, so the next slide. So these are the top things that people were concerned about. This was an open-ended question. We said, what do you see as a problem for the Bear River? And these were our top ones. And this was in order of response, right? So most people said water supply and quantity was the thing that they worried about the most. That was a problem. And then you go down. So we took the top 4. So is there anything on this list that was not included that you think is a problem that these don't address? Nate, I'm calling on you.
He's asleep.
Yeah.
Nope, looks good, Ann.
Big list.
Good job.
This is a
Well
good
done.
list.
He's cleaning his new rifle again.
All right.
Down in
Because-
St. George.
And there might be some things on this that you don't agree with, that you don't feel is a problem and you don't think that we need to address it. But hopefully the top 4 are things that you all, you know, will at least think about. Next slide. Okay, so this is the thing that I think is really interesting in the fact that there are a ton of people. So the thing is there's lots of lines on the left, okay? Sorry, you guys, you can't see it. There's lots of lines on the left. Those are all the different people who have some sort of plan or are obligated to take care of the watershed. That's a lot, okay? That's a lot of different people who are addressing those things. And on the top, not the very top, the itty bitty objective things, but the threat, the development of open space, habitat degradation, water supply, and degraded water quality. Those are the top 4 that we chose that people were the most concerned about. And you may or may not agree with those, but so wherever there's a dot under a column, that means that all of those are addressing that issue. So we have the power to put on our agenda saying, okay, I don't understand something. These are the different groups that we could ask to come and be on our agenda. That we can say, hey, I don't understand. You guys are all working on the development of open space. There's 7 of them. We could have all 7 saying like, oh, are you guys even working together? Are you talking about the same things? Or is it just too weird? You know, we don't want to talk to one another. That seems kind of silly. So we could ask them to come and educate us so that we can help with recommendations for policy. Because I really see, and this is why it's working so well with what Jake wanted, is that I really feel that we have the capacity to really be influential. And I have to say, I've talked to other people, members of watershed councils, and they just feel like they go to a meeting. And I don't want to have to go to another meeting. I want actually things to come out of it. Not to, and we actually have action items that from Jake, we at least have one. Okay, next slide, please. Yeah.
Where did you get that list?
We compiled it, we did the research.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a spreadsheet that I gave, I can supply that again. That basically shows every single plan, every single objective and goal in their plans that relate to water. And we combine them, and that's how we got these dots.
That's incredible.
It is, it's just such a really good resource.
Yeah.
And things really haven't changed that much. The thing that's not on here is obviously the model that Jake just presented, right? It's not on this because it didn't exist when we were doing it. So, I do want to focus on just an idea for other things to make it, to hopefully help you think about what type of questions or what the meeting, the next meetings could look like, right? It's really a burden for all the meetings to be decided by the chair and the executive chair and you know, it's really a huge burden, especially if you guys are bored out of your gourd, right? Again, we don't want a meeting just to go to another meeting. So we took this objective. Now, again, this is not your objective. This is something that we came up with. But what I want you to look at are the different strategies and metrics. So there's lots of different ways we can address water conservation, right? Or, you know, the lack of water or whatever you want to call it. So we could decide what some of those strategies are. But then, just like Jake said, we've got to measure that. We've got to figure out what that looks like to say that we're actually moving the needle or it's being done, right? I have to say on all of those lines that of all the different plans that we looked at that were, you know, one was Utah Bear River Council, you know, Bear River District. One was the Cache District, and some were, you know, state, some were, you know, bigger. I think 3 had metrics. None of the rest of them had any metrics. So we don't know what all of these, our taxpayers, dollars are, how they're doing because they set out a plan, but they don't have any metrics on it. So I feel like we need to figure that out. And that's also part of the model. We can figure that out. Now this is work, and I'm sorry that if you thought you were just coming to a meeting to just, you know, get goodies sometimes. But I really feel like we have the right people at the table to write this. And you guys, all of y'all, I lived in the South for 14 years, so I can say that, can address that, right? So these are just ideas. And again, all of this, I provided this to you before, and you probably didn't read it because you didn't know what the crap this watershed council was gonna be, right? I mean, it's hard to envision. So next slide, please.
And is there a
Website.
for someone like me that came a little bit later? I don't know. Did I get that email?
We'll supply it again. So it's, I have everything on the website. You can look up the spreadsheet if you want. This, all of things from this presentation came from the documents that I'm talking about. And it's not perfect, right? I'm not saying, but it was just a really good piece of work that we got done that I think will help us in shaping our agendas so that we can get the right information at the right time so that we can really make recommendations, right? We can have the right information. And I really feel like, unfortunately, guess what? Val J might have to do the next presentation because he wants to share some information from whatever you represent, whatever you want. If you want to do it for the Farm Bureau or if you want to do it for the water group, right? You have another water group that you're representing. Told you. Okay, So I have a couple of animations on this one, so just check one. So the things that we have done already, you might not feel like we've accomplished anything. We have, we've already agreed that we want to go on a field tour. I can't remember, did we have a date for that?
An upcoming one? We don't, but that's.
But we did decide we wanted to do it, okay? The next one, that's okay, you can light them, but both up. You put together, we put together a small group to look at, thank you, Trevor. And Christy, and Carl, and I don't know who else. But you guys, you agreed, last meeting, you guys agreed to have somebody look at those, because
Yeah.
there were some things in there that could affect watershed councils. Well, did you hear anything? Did you hear that anything happened with watershed councils in the legislature?
No, because they dropped.
Because they dropped it, because we were a voice. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Really important. Then the
Yeah,
thing we
check.
did is that we already sent a letter to Jake's group saying that we wanted to participate. Now, we're probably gonna be forced to, but only because we don't want that whole project without us getting updates, right? That's just, so we wanted to say that, yes, we're in. And those are gonna come up, and maybe you guys didn't see the letter that we wrote on the fly saying, and do you really want to read all the modeling stuff? Well, that's gonna be tough. It's really tough, but as a group, I feel like we should stay engaged. So that we can be relevant. All right, so the next slide. So agenda items, I want us to take, get the agenda right on the back. And think of 3 things you want to hear for an agenda item that you want to know more of. If we want to go back to the slide that nobody can read, sorry, I thought it was big enough, but obviously it was not. Of all the different agencies that have plans that they're trying to address water, land use, water quality. So go at it. And guys online, I need you to put those in chat, please. Or email them to me. So Sean, who's still online?
We have Bradley Perry, Mark Skadden, Jeff Oskmiller, James Dorito, Nathan,
Good,
Zach.
good. Guys, you're on the hook.
Matt Yost.
Okay, you guys have less than 5, sorry. Okay, so they're gonna finish up and then you guys, we really do want to hear about it. I do, don't you guys want to hear about meetings?
I've been watching them, the videos.
So thank you.
The 3 items we talk about at the next meeting in July,
Well, for the next couple of meetings,
for the next couple of meetings.
yeah. So that we can have a plan, at least even maybe the next year of things that we feel that we want to hear.
Yes, please.
And this is Brad. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was just gonna say, if at any time you want to put an agenda item on some of the ongoing projects that we're doing and the support that we could gain, from across the border in Idaho and, there in the Box Elder County at Washakie, some of the things that we've proposed and some of the collaboration and communication we could do, we would certainly be happy to present or kind of show those things. Basically, our main message is let us send Idaho water to the Great Salt Lake so Utah water users don't have to.
Thank you.
We like that idea.
Oh, no way.
Both of them.
Yeah, the habitat restoration for that Bear River massacre, and your stats on removing Russian olives. Yeah, that's
Very impressive.
Yeah, and we'll be applying, the NRCS has asked us to apply to do some wetlands and some water work at our Washakie Cemetery, where we have about 3 to 6 CFS of water, depending on the right. And then, you know, just some of those things that we can contribute, just make sure that we're coordinating, collaborating. Like someone had said, is this good for the Great Salt Lake or is this not good?
Right. And it, just like Bradley said, even if it's a topic about a specific project, I think it's great, because we can infer a lot of things about any particular thing.
Right.
I just talked to a couple of people about the watershed councils, and some people were not here, but from others, and they were so frustrated, they just felt like there was a waste of time. And I really don't want this to be, because we've been government appointed.
And actually, that's a good segue into Melissa's presentation, because I think there are multiple stakeholders in this room that are affected by habitat restoration through beavers.
Absolutely.
I had no idea. Of course, I have no idea about lots of things, but.
Hey, thank you. So Shane and I are from the Division of Wildlife Resources, and we are excited to talk to you about beavers and habitat restoration and green groceries for your livestock. So we're gonna split up the presentation, and we welcome questions, and we'd love to hear your feedback.
Is the volume up on this, or can it play sound?
It might come through now.
Yeah, it'll
Okay.
probably come through owl.
Yeah, great. All right, so yeah, as Melissa said, Shane Hill, habitat restoration biologist. My main job is to facilitate the watershed restoration initiative through the Division of Wildlife Resources. A lot of the work I do is in the Bear River Basin. I currently have a lot of proposals in Cache County, Logan River, Blacksmith Fork River, that I think should involve a lot of you. So we're here to talk about the work we're doing using beavers. We're not trying to restore beaver habitat per se. We're restoring habitat through partnering with beavers. And we just wanted a little bit to explain why we do this. We see beavers as they benefit a lot of different species, all the way up to our big game species that a lot of our public utilize and can benefit the livestock and industry with some strategic management. Next slide. So I'm not a hydrologist, but a lot of the work at USU, hydrologists and geomorphologists at USU have studied how beavers influence watersheds, and if I wanted to, if this will work, play an excerpt from this video that they have to kind of set the stage. I'll try to kind of summarize what is being talked about here. This is from Joe Wheaton, Nick Bowes, professors at USU. Joe here is kind of showing how like old beaver dams end up with a gravelly substrate, which benefits fish, and these old established beaver complexes, the sediments that they capture become a sponge and create little reservoirs up in the headwaters of the watershed. So it's okay. I don't expect to go through all this, but my main intent was like this
whole valley bomb, and they
you
slowly
wanna
release it out over the long.
Start it over?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's fine from there. Awesome.
Beaver dams do is they
It's only like-
fundamentally alter the delivery of water, sediment, and nutrients by slowing it down, giving it places to infiltrate.
Creates a mosaic of habitats that are important for birds, for fish, for
Plant species. The deposits that are behind these beaver dams, most people think that they're just filled with fines and mud.
But in fact, they're filled with a big mixture of grain sizes. If I'm a cutthroat trout, looking for good places to spawn, a lot of times these old beaver dams that have filled to the brim with sediment change from that sort of slow energy environment into a more higher energy environment. This creates wonderful spawning gravels. Beaver dams over thousands and thousands of years have been built. They've filled up with sediment and they built this valley bottom up. And the sediments that they filled this thing up with are the perfect sponge. And so the real storage from beaver dams is not in the ponds. It's by raising these water tables and then saturating and flooding that whole valley bottom. And they slowly release it out over the long, hot summer.
So yeah, I wanted to watch this to kind of start off the discussion of like what the benefits of beavers are for the watershed and how they can benefit us as well. So like we as the Division of Wildlife Resources who manage the wildlife and are kind of in charge of the beavers have began to utilize them in our restoration efforts. Next slide.
Beaver dams do.
So some of those benefits he talked about there, but I wanted to touch on a little more specifically on the how in a beaver, an area where beavers have established, they can provide mitigation for fire risk. See, this is just an example of where the fire, it skipped over the riparian area here because of the beaver dams, provide a lot of shelter for wildlife. And, you know, after a rain event and a big fire, a lot of sediment would run off and beaver dams are able to capture as well, which leads into like how beaver dams are also able to improve water quality through acting as speed bumps in the headwaters after fires, or just in general, slowing erosion down. And this graph here shows like after a rain event above the beaver dam, there's a big large spike, which indicates a lot of potential of erosion. But below the dam, it's more attenuated and sloped. The curve is lower, and so which is kind of showing that the beaver dams are storing water, pulling it back and slowing erosion down. Next slide. And also some work. This is an article from Eric Thacker at USU Extension talking about benefits to beavers even for our livestock, and we appreciate it for habitat improvement for big game, but it also can benefit our livestock grazing, which is kind of, you might not expect that. There's been a stigma and livestock and beavers can't coexist and help each other out. So next. So these beaver dams can improve forage quality by raising the water table, retaining the water, which allows the plants to have access to the water longer into the year, in the growing season. And the greener the forage, the higher the protein. I'm sure some of you are aware of, and for wildlife, that's important as they go into the winter. They need those fat stores. Next. So yeah, the vegetation stays greener longer because of the increased soil moisture. And they create those wet meadows through flooding and raised water table. Okay, go ahead. So the Division of Wildlife, we have a three-pronged approach to use beavers. We have a program mainly facilitated through USU's Beaver Ecology and Relocation Center. We get a lot of help from them. They go out and trap nuisance beavers and give them to us so we can go and relocate them. And it's really a win-win-win situation. A win for the beaver because they're not lethally trapped where they would have otherwise been. The landowner gets any nuisance issues removed, and then a win for us next, because we get to go and relocate them into areas where we need them to go. This was just a video of me releasing a beaver in a pond. Like, it's not going to work.
I might have pictures from
You can share them.
You can email the link to this presentation too.
Yeah, it maybe like some sharing issues like that. But yeah, we go out and release them. I've released beavers out in Fox Elder County, Cache Valley. We'll talk a little bit about that as some success stories later on. And then, so that was the second prong taking them out, but then we are aware of how beavers can become nuisances, even the ones that we release. And this is just a slide showing all of the news, like beavers have been in the news a lot in the past few years, and that we've seen that the effects of that. People are more interested in having beavers on their land, or they want the beavers on their land live trapped instead of lethally trapped. And so like we've seen the effects, and so that with that in mind, we want to also address the needs in areas where we release the beavers, or even in areas where we might be able to encourage people to leave the beavers there through living with beaver strategies. So we do have the ability to help landowners and others to fence culverts, like in a particular way. There's certain strategies, do pond levelers, so we can manage the level of the beaver ponds, so the beavers can stay without impacting the infrastructure. And this has been implemented all across the country and with success. And in fact, next, we're holding a 2-day course. We want to advertise this a little bit at our hardware WMA, having a nonprofit from Washington, I believe, whose their sole purpose is helping landowners with beaver issues without trapping them. And so we're holding a course, and it's an open invitation. If you're interested, I'll leave a card here. You can email me and get you on that list. Or if you know of anybody that we should get on that list, please let us know. Thanks. So Melissa's going to take over from here, talking about some success stories through beaver restoration.
So like Shane said, if you're interested in that course, we would love to have you sign up. Tell your friends and contacts, especially in ranching, farming, canal companies, etc. So Shane talked about all these beaver releases. They're really made possible through collaboration. We are so fortunate to have a number of private landowners, other partners in different agencies, from partners with Fish and Wildlife Service to NRCS to Utah Department of Ag and Food, to the local conservation districts. Maybe some of you know Jay Wild. Hit next, please. He wanted to restore flow on his ranch, and he realized that there were no more beavers. Next. So he attempted to release beavers without success. Then he partnered with the organization, and so he was able to get some beaver dam analogs built. Right? Raise your hand if you've heard of a beaver dam analog. Okay, great. So beaver dam analog, it's when humans try to replicate the work of a beaver
without cutting down trees.
By finding like eroded streams that have like a deeply incised area. We'll take like post and we have to go through like a stream alteration permit process and some planning. We'll pound post in the stream and then weave vegetation in. And so that mimics the work of beavers building their beaver dam. And then the flow is slowed down, sediment is like trapped, and then slowly the stream kind of heals. So next.
Sometimes, but not always, we do that with the intent of releasing beavers in that area. If there's enough vegetation, enough food for them there to sustain themselves in that area after the fact. Otherwise, we're just building the dams and maintaining them ourselves until we can release them.
All right, so then he released some beavers. Next. Right, and so now coupled with his BDAs and beavers, he's just seeing like that habitat resilience in the area.
Yeah.
Is that 42 days longer
Yeah.
now? Okay.
Oh, sorry, yeah, which is pretty much, it made it perennial again. It was 42 days until it froze over, really.
Oh, that's great.
He
Yeah.
was able to, from a ephemeral stream that used to be perennial back to a perennial stream through getting beavers back on his ranch.
Next, please. And I think his quote, really says it all. When you see the results, It's almost like magic. It makes the effort worthwhile.
That might not work. This is just another beaver release. I'll cover this one because like just a ranch in Cache Valley who had a similar situation. There's a really incised stream and they're trying to get it back to what it was like 150 years ago and or the previous owners before them said they used to be able to jump across the stream. Now there's a 50-foot gap between banks and 20-foot size stream. So the water table has really dropped because of I think the lack of beavers in there and maybe a little overgrazing, but so they're attempting to bring that back. They're releasing beavers at West Canyon Ranch.
All right, so this photo was taken way up high by a drone flying over a stream in Summit County on a ranch that's been working on a number of habitat restoration projects over the past 10 years. This is the most incised area, and you can look closely and see like where BDAs are built in here. So this ranch started working on building these BDAs in partnership with Trout Unlimited and Utah Department of Ag and Food, Sageland Collaborative, and also the local conservation district back in, I want to say 2018. So they've built like 5 iterations of these BDAs along this huge stream, and they're really seeing the success from the sediment capture, the way the incision is healing, and really they're stopping that erosion that was happening in the pasture that potentially could risk this access road. And so they're also like raising the water in the water table. And like Professor Eric Thacker, who Shane alluded to, Professor Eric Thacker states, you know, they're really raising like the possibility and capacity to have those green groceries because cattle are such an important part of their ranching heritage and their whole operation. And so they've also implemented some rotational grazing strategies that target the green groceries during a certain time of year and then move the cattle on. So next slide. So here's just a close-up view. This is a little bit downstream from that other photo. This is showing in June 2022, the sediment capture of these BDAs. And I mean, you can see, look at the green groceries back in that area and just look at how much sediment has been deposited there. So this ranch, they hosted a big workshop with the Summit County Conservation District. Eric Thacker was a keynote speaker and brought all kinds of people together to talk about the success of these BDAs. And then later in the summer, they released live beavers. So we are excited. Again, one of our amazing private landowner partners that's still the huge beaver believers. Okay, this is another ranch in Summit County. Ron Boyer, his family has been ranching up there for over 100 years. This quote might be a little bit hard to read. So during 2021, when drought conditions were like really dire, Ron was mowing some hay in a pasture near a really small stream, and he had some beaver activity, and he worked to install a beaver deceiver. So it's like one of those tools to coexist with beavers, still allow irrigation water to flow, and beavers are not causing issues. So Ron said, in the 40 years I've worked on the family ranch, I've seen snow loads shrink and stream flows sink as the summer goes on. I think the only way we could keep our ground from burning up is to store water in the ground. Last year on this piece of ground next to the beaver deceiver, I baled about 20 small 60-pound bales. This year I baled about 110 small 60-pound bales. I do agree weather was a factor, but the extra water storage in the ground does help. So, you know, we appreciate that he was just willing to share his enthusiasm about living with beavers, coexisting, and that they're helping him with his green groceries, his hay, and continuing his rural livelihood. So I think that's our last slide. If we have questions, we'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd love to hear more or less, we're here.
Yeah, just like I said, I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. We think like this is a great place to present this sort of stuff, especially if you're able to translate this into comments for legislation in the future about using DDAs in streams when it comes to stream alteration permits or with beaver management in general. Like it will all be beneficial, like get everyone on board with kind of changing the paradigm between the public and beavers, kind of what the resources are out there to live with them and to improve habitat.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate this program. We had a couple of beavers flooding our public use trails, and so we were able to trap them and get them relocated, and there's even a video of them being released. And on a funny note, we have some beavers trying to dam up a 2,000 acre wetland unit right now. There are hard workers.
We need to put them where they're needed.
I know.
What are they using?
Yeah, but no.
You don't have trees.
I don't know. what
They
they're gonna
they
do,
like
actually.
cattails, so
They'll use
they'll
that.
cut down cattails.
But they
the
can eat
roots
them?
and- They'll eat the roots of cattails.
Wow.
We can eat the roots.
Yeah.
Don't know, I've tried it. Green groceries.
Yeah, I only had 3 cards in or 4 in my truck. I'll leave them here. So, if you're interested, grab it. Any that living with Beaver course, grab one of these and email me and I'll get you on the list and make sure you're aware of any updates.
When is it at?
June 5th and 6th, that hardware.
We can email that out with the meeting note.
Shane, can I get one of your cards? Zach is asking for it in the chat and I can just give him that information.
And if people, are interested in going to like one of these ranches that's done a lot of these BDAs and is coexisting with beavers too, we could organize a field trip this summer, and that could be a trip we could take you on,
Yeah.
so.
Jay.
I want to go inside the lodge. That's what
Jay
I
Wild,
want.
He's just in Preston, just on the other side of the border. He's in-
Just want to
the
go inside
watershed.
one of those lodges so bad.
I still personally, he's happy to go and take people up there to see what.
Are any of the Summit County restoration projects in our watershed? Is that the?
Because we
Probably.
There are, like I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot going on in the Little Bear and Logan watershed with this sort of stuff as
Okay,
well.
cool. What office are you guys out of?
Ogden.
You're-
And in the Ogden office, because like, I see a lot of people in the Weaver as well, so. I know we probably want to go somewhere like locally in the Bear, but if there's an opportunity in the Weaver, maybe we can have the Weaver and Bear River Watershed meet somewhere, to councils meet.
Yeah,
Sure.
We can arm wrestle over water.
Yeah.
And we will be having a WRI tour, watershed restoration initiative tour, and it's really involved.
They're
with that.
great. They're really, it just really makes you understand how the different projects are working, and it really kind of opens up your eye to the possibilities of what the ranchers are doing, or the even the WMAs.
Yeah, and we are going on one of our WMAs where we've already installed about 40 DDAs, and we'll be doing some more actually out on the tour, getting in the water and building them, so.
Thank you.
You're all invited.
We can email it out too.
Yeah, she took a picture of it, but.
You can email me if you have any questions.
Thank you. Okay, does everybody have their agenda items that they want to give to me? Or they want in their chat?
There are none in the chat.
Hey, guys. Thank you.
You do verbally or in written?
What is, because I think we're way over
Okay.
time. Why don't you just give them to me, or I can take a picture if you took other notes on the under paper.
Yeah, just add them to me.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah, are there any public comments?
I'm public and I'm adding some.
You're what?
I have a comment, Christy.
Sure, go ahead, Carly.
I just want to connect Trevor's legislative recap with Ann's presentation, which is House Bill 280 is mandating water resources to create the next state water plan. Were you going to talk about that?
No, that was on my list for the agenda.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
by 2026. They want the next one, and they have specifically stated that we'll be working with all the watershed councils. And so educating yourself and getting to know your watershed, like Ann is suggesting, is so important and will help you be able to provide like something valuable to the state water plan that's actually useful for your basin. We're still figuring out exactly what that's gonna look like. We're hoping to make a template so that you know what you're going off of. But I just think I wanted to give you a heads up for that, and I think those two things will go hand in hand.
Thanks, Carly. Okay. We are to the schedule next meeting portion of the agenda, which is always.
So I think we probably need to make a venture out to Rich County at some point.
I agree with
This
that.
meeting or the next meeting. And we probably need to have one in Cache Valley as well. Just because, as much as I like only having a 30-minute drive, I'm sure that folks in Rich would like to not have an hour and a half drive, so.
Okay. I like.
So on that note, Trevor, thanks for that though. Yeah, we like to spread the love around. We are planning a field trip of the Logan River Observatory System. So that was kind of the model that the legislature would like to see on other streams across the state as far as metering and measuring devices on a river system. So we're gonna try and put a little tour together of that and then combine that with a tour of the water research lab there and some of the projects they're doing in there. And as soon as the Bear River Commission picks a date for their spring/summer tour, which they're going to do on the 16th, we will then pick a day for that tour over here. And so we could either combine that with a meeting/tour or just a summer tour day in place of a meeting 1 month, maybe. That's up to you guys to decide.
It's gonna be a July meeting, or are we doing the quarter?
So last year was our first year as a watershed council, and for a lot of the stakeholders, summer is crazy. So we met in April, and then we met in late October.
Yeah.
We never amended the bylaws so that we only have to meet a minimum number of times and not quarterly. So right now we're committed to meet quarterly.
Oh,
So,
really? Oh,
uh-huh.
huh.
Yep, but April's a new quarter. So,
Well, but if we do the field trip, it would probably be in June or July, right?
I would guess. Well, actually, the Bear River Commission, if we're doing it, you want to do it back to back, Nate? Is that what you were thinking?
No, we want to do it, yeah, spread out from that one a little bit. So we just want to wait till they pick their date, which they had talked about May originally, but then Don, last I talked to him, he said that may change. And so I was waiting to hear what that, we didn't want to plan it too close to that. And so that it didn't try to get people going to two things the same week or the same month, even potentially.
But usually those are 1 day.
They are.
There
Yep.
might be some benefit to putting it back to back so the people that are traveling can just stay over and do that the next day, potentially.
Yeah, not a bad idea.
Let's think of it. This is a thought.
Are they from Oneida to state line, or where are we going this year?
That's their discussion. That's what they had talked about.
Yeah, so it's in the area.
Oneida, yeah.
Yeah, because they didn't do it, didn't end up doing it last year, I don't believe we did, or we did your area.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
Right, 'cause it was a big water.
so we kind of skipped the Oneida
Yeah, we did.
to Cutler, Oneida to state line, we do Oneida to state line, so that's kind of the Idaho side, and then we could do Logan River the next day, and people could stay over, I would think.
What's our target audience, and do we want those same people, or look at that when you're thinking about it?
and I think at some point, we're gonna want meetings that are set for the year so that people can plan on, if we make the plans and then they work around our schedule, that is the best. And because the Utah Watersheds Council has a set meetings, and so if we coordinate them near theirs, maybe.
Well, I like the idea of not having a summer meeting, but having a tour. Although with the review that we're asked to do with the state water plan and the Great Salt Lake Integrated Plan, we might need to have, you know, a shorter compressed meeting with just those two agenda items on it, but
On the tour?
like, yeah, as part of the tour, either before or after this group meets and discusses what, you know, where we're at in those studies and if there's any feedback needed at that point. And then maybe we do the October meeting over in Rich County.
I like that idea. So Nate, keep us informed on tour dates. And we will piggyback on the Cache Valley tour. Is that what I'm hearing?
I
With
think
a
it's a good
short,
idea.
just a very short.
Yeah, I like that.
And by the
Both be
way,
One day.
you
so-
will need to read two meetings worth of minutes because I failed to get that on the agenda. And so we're going to cover that in that, you know, passing minutes usually doesn't take much time and then we'll address the water plans. Okay. All right. Ready, break. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll make the second.
Okay, we don't have to vote on that. So thank you all.
Thank you. Guys, hey guys online. I have your names.
And if someone
my
wants
own
to
mind.
be on the
I'll keep my sheet.
modeling team with
I can take a picture.
the Great Salt Lake Basin Integrated Plan, that'd be fantastic. Volunteers are always nice versus coercion.